Hi everybody, like I always say, Namaskara everyone, Andariki Namaskaram, Ellargu Swagatam and a very warm welcome to my own channel, Chem GPT Class 9 to J Need. How are you guys? I hope that you all are doing great, and today we are going to do here Class 12 Solution Chapter and Top 30 Guaranteed Questions. Okay, now when I say guaranteed questions, of course it is not going to be like if it is written 5 then only 5 will come. Maybe it is 10, but the concepts are going to be repeated. That is for sure. Absolutely sure. All right. Now, what is it that you are going to get in this session? I will be taking care of the whole chapter. So, this is going to be basically a one shot session. Apart from that, we will be doing top 30 guaranteed questions. So, that means that this will be a good revision for you all for your class 12th. Okay. If your exams are coming up very soon, then please don't forget to like this video, share this video, and subscribe to this channel because this is where I am going to teach you right now. All right. Apart from this, there are a few things that I want to tell you, everybody. You can see that everything is here. Everything is here. So I will be taking care of each and every concept from the POV of CBSE board examination, and this is going to be your board level session. For JEE main second attempt, I'll be doing a separate session, so don't worry about it. That will also happen. So don't forget to subscribe to this question. Stick till the end of the session because we are going to do a lot of important questions and a lot of important concepts. Okay. Yes, everybody. All right. So let's get started, everyone, because we are going to have clinical clear concepts. Okay. So first of all, everybody, take a look at it. Now, whenever we say solution, we usually understand that solution means something is going to be liquid, but that's not the case, everybody. That's not the case. Solutions can be different. What usually decides the state of the solution? It's usually the solvent that decides the state of the solution. Now, if we are talking about gaseous solution, then obviously what happens is you can have solute as gas, but the solvent has to be gaseous. Okay. Solute can be liquid, solvent has to be gas. Solute can be solid, but the solvent has to be gaseous. Again, some of the common examples here are, look at this mixture of oxygen and nitrogen gases. Yes, chloroform mixed with nitrogen gases, camphor in nitrogen gases. These are the examples, everybody. I hope you can see it right now. You can see it all right. Now, if we talk about liquid solutions, then we will not notice that if the solute is gas and the solvent is liquid, then we are going to have oxygen dissolved in water. This is an example. Okay, now this is a typical picture from your NCRT, everybody. If the solute is liquid and the solvent is liquid, then you can have ethanol dissolved in water. This can be an example. If the solute is solid and the solvent is liquid, then glucose dissolved in water. This is going to be your example, right? Just one example. You can write anything that you remember. Now let's talk about solid solutions. When we talk about solid solution, of course, your solute can be gas, but the solvent has to be solid. Okay. And that means that your example is solution of hydrogen in palladium. All right. If your solute is liquid and the solvent is solid, then you're going to have amalgam of mercury with sodium. If your solute is solid and the solvent is also liquid, then you're going to have copper dissolved in gold. Okay. All right. These are the examples. Okay. Now, in this particular chapter, as you must have noticed in your NCRT, it is clearly written that we talk about binary solutions here. What do you mean by binary solutions, my dear students? By binary solutions, you understand that there are only two components in the solution. यानी कि यहाँ पे सिर्फ और सिर्फ दो components है, एक solvent और दूसरा solute. We are only going to talk about binary solution. One is going to be solute, one is going to be solvent. That's it. Okay. We're not going to complicate our life a little too much here. Okay. So solvent, what is solvent? Solvent क्या होता है? Solvent जो है उसे we usually consider solvent to be as component A or the number one component. It's usually the solvent that decides the state, the physical state of a solution. Get it? Solute is the component 2. Solute को हम component B या component 2 मानते हैं, and in solute one or more compounds, one or more components can be present. Yes, and it is usually present in a lesser amount. That's what we say. Understood, everybody? Yes. All right, chalo theek hai. This much you have understood. Great. Okay. After this, now we're going to talk about concentration. See, when we talk about concentration, when we were younger, we used to talk about concentrated and dilute. Now, both concentrated and dilute, these are very vague terms. Vague का मतलब क्या होता है? Vague terms, that means that these are very they're not talking about anything precisely, है ना? They're not talking about anything precisely. They basically talk about कि this probably has a lot amount of solute, or this probably has a less amount of solute. Now that's not gonna work out for us, because hey, we are all science student, right? We are all chemistry students. Accuracy and precision is something that we really needed, which is why we have these many concentration terms. Number one concentration term is, oh, by the way, in this chapter, in this session, I'm also doing questions topic wise. So please pay attention and please stay till the end of the session. You will be really, really benefited. Don't worry about it. Now look at this. Mass percentage क्या होता है? Mass percentage is basically W by W. You can define it by saying the mass percentage of a component of a solution is defined as mass percent of a component, which is equal to mass of the component in the solution divided by total mass of the solution multiplied with 100. Okay. All right, let's go ahead. Now, volume percentage, V by V. This is equal to the volume percentage is defined as volume percent of a component is equal to volume of the component divided by total volume of solution multiplied with 100. Next, everybody take a look at parts per million. When a solute is present in trace quantities, that is when it is in very little quantity, it is convenient to express concentration in parts per million, and it is defined as parts per million is equal to number of parts of the component divided by total number of parts of all components of the solution multiplied with 10 to the power 6. Gotcha, clear. All right. Next comes your mole fraction. This is something that you have studied in your class 11th also. So let's do a quick recap here. Okay. Commonly, it is used as a symbol for mole fraction is chi. This is not x, guys. This is chi. Okay. And the subscript is used on the right hand side of chi, which denotes the component. So you can either write it as chi of A or you can write it as chi of B. That means that chi of A will be the solvent, mole fraction of the solvent. Chi of B matlab मोल फ्रैक्शन ऑफ द सॉल्यूट. आ गया समझ? ठीक है, इतना समझ आ रहा है? यस, ग्रेट. ऑलराइट, ठीक है. शुड आई कैरी ऑन? ग्रेट. ओके. Now it is defined as mole fraction of a component is equal to number of moles of the component divided by total number of moles of all the components. ठीक है. Now, for example, in a binary mixture, binary again, that means only two components are there. If the number of moles of A and B are n of A and n of B respectively, तो फिर mole fraction क्या हो जाएगा? The mole fraction will be written as chi of A is equal to n of A divided by total moles. Total moles यानी कि n of A plus n of B. Understood? Great. Next comes molarity, very famous. Everybody knows about molarity. Molarity is denoted by capital M. And what is the definition of molarity? It is defined as the number of moles of solute dissolved in 1 liter. 1 liter. Or you can also write it as per cubic decimeter of solution. That means molarity ka definition, molarity ka formula. What will be the formula for molarity? It will be moles of solute divided by volume of solution in liter. Understood? Easy peasy, biryani tasty. Okay. Next is your molality. What is molality? Molality is denoted by small letter m and it is defined as the number of moles of the solute per kilogram, that is kg of the solvent, and it is expressed as molality m is equal to moles of solute divided by mass of solvent in kg. Understood? Okay. Alrighty guys. Now here's the question for you. The question is, see, topic wise told you. Now that we're done with the concentration term, I'm bringing you some questions here. The question is, which of the following possesses physical state of solute and physical state of solute and solvent as a liquid and solid respectively? Yani ki solvent, the solvent is supposed to be solid and the solute is supposed to be liquid. You get it? Solute is supposed to be liquid and the solvent is supposed to be solid. So chalo, let's read the question, read the options as well. Solution of sugar and water. Solute is supposed to be solid, guys. So it cannot be, if it is sugar in water, then sugar is solid and sugar is a solute. So this is not possible. Next, look at it. Zinc amalgam. Yes, I think zinc amalgam is the correct answer. What do you all think? Solution of naphthalene and benzene. Again, Solute is here solid. Benzene is a liquid, so no, this is not possible. Brass, no, that's also not possible because it will be solid and solid. So I think option B, zinc amalgam, is the correct answer. Let's take a look at the explanation as well. Yes, zinc amalgam is the correct answer. Physical state of solute and solvent are liquid and solid respectively. So this is the correct answer. All righty. Okay. Next question, everybody, is assertion is molarity of solution changes with temperature. And the reason is molarity is a colligative property. Definitely not. Molarity of a solution changes with temperature. ये सही है. This is absolutely true because you see moles of solute divided by volume of solution in liter है ना. What is written here? Definition in the denominator you have volume of solution in liter. That means that if temperature increases, volume is also going to be increased because volume and temperature, they are proportional, directly proportional to each other. Everybody, is that right? Absolutely right. So that means that we have to say A is true, but reason is false. Colligative property, there are only four, that is relative lowering of vapor pressure, elevation in boiling point, depression in freezing point, and osmotic pressure, right? So A is true and R is false. So this is going to be our correct answer. Let's take a look at it. Yes, that is the correct answer. Alrighty. Next question. Molality of a solution changes with temperature. Molality of a solution changes with temperature. Not at all. Volume of a solution changes with temperature. That is true. That means that we will have to say A is false, but R is true. Is that the correct answer? Absolutely. Look at molality. Molality has mass of solvent in kg. So molality cannot change with temperature. Understood this? Yes. Okay. Now here's a question for you. Calculate the molarity of 9.8% weight by weight solution of sulfuric acid if the density of the solution is 1.02 gram per milliliter. Okay. So, bacha log, we have to calculate the molarity. That means molarity is not given to us, right? 9.8% weight by weight. What is given to you? It is given to you that 99.8% W by W solution. That means everybody, that 9.8 gram is present, isn't it? 9.8 gram is present, yes, and molar mass of H2SO4 is also given to you as 98 gram per milliliter. That means, can we calculate? Can we calculate the number of moles, everybody? Yes, can we calculate it? We can. So number of moles will be given mass. Given mass is 9.8, molar mass is 98. That means you will be getting 0.1. Is that right? Absolutely. Right, 0.1 moles you will get. Once you get the moles, after that, what is given to you? Look at this. Density is given to you. So let's take a look at the solution here, everybody. Yes. Density is given to you, everyone. Density is given to you. You can also calculate the volume from here. How can you calculate the volume? See, mass of solution divided by density. You know that density is equal to mass by volume. Guys, why have I written all of this? So that you don't waste time. You really have a no time. And I'm very sorry that I take a lot of gap, but this is not going to happen, I promise. Because now I have already made the chemical kinetics session also, because I am jobless, you know that, right? I do not have a job because I don't have a job to support the home that I run and to pay the bills. I have a couple of freelancing and I was not getting time to make the slides, but now I have made it, so things are going to be a little faster. Don't worry about it. Okay, next coming up is chemical kinetics. After that is coordination compounds. After that is DNF block. After that we're going to step into the organic part, and we will do P block also in some time. Okay, so take a look at it. You have mass of solution divided by density of solution. So 100 gram divided by 1.02 gram, which is the density here given. You will calculate it and you will find that it is 98.039 milliliter. That means that it will be 0.098 liter. All right. Now, number of moles I have already calculated. I showed it to you. That will be 0.1 mole. So, M is equal to 0.1 mole divided by the volume, that is 0.098. That will be equal to 1.08 molar, and that is the correct answer. Understood? Next question, guys. Question number 5. Calculate the molarity of pure water. Density of water is given to you. Hey, everybody, do you remember that 55.55? That was the answer. This number used to appear somewhere. Exactly. So that is the number that we have to use. So take a look at the solution. Density is given to you as 1 gram per milliliter. Yes, density is given to you as 1 gram per milliliter. So mass, if I want to calculate the mass of 1000 milliliter of water is going to be what? Volume multiplied with density. Is that right? Absolutely. So volume is 1000 milliliter. We're considering it. Okay. Multiplied with 1 if I do. Why? Because density is given to you as 1. So it will become 1000 gram per milliliter, right? Now, mass moles of water, we calculate, yes, 55.55 mole. Do you remember I told you this number used to appear somewhere, isn't it? So 55.55 mole. Now, moles of water present in 1000 milliliter or 1 liter of water will be equal to what? Molarity will be equal to 55.55 molar only. That is your correct answer. Okay. Next question, guys. A solution of glucose, which is C6H12O6 in water, is labeled as 10% by weight. What would be the molality of the solution? Molar mass of glucose is also given to you, which is 180 gram per mole. Everyone, let's take a look at it. So mass of solution is equal to 100 gram. Mass of solute is equal to 10 gram. Mass of solvent is equal to how much? 100 minus 10. If I do, will I get 90 gram? Yes, that will be the mass of solvent. See, mass of solution is given to you. Mass of solution. See, since it is written, it's labeled as 10%. That means mass of solute is 10 gram. And we are assuming, this is something that we are assuming. So mass of solution, we are assuming it to be 100 gram. So 100 minus 10 gram. Why did we assume? Because 10% percent is given to you. So 100 gram here, mass of solute is 10 gram. 100 minus 10 is equal to 90 gram. It will become 0.09 kg. Now number of moles of solute N is equal to 10 divided by 180. So it will become 0.055 mole. And now what do you have to calculate? You have to calculate the molality, isn't it? So molality, small letter m is equal to how much? See, number of moles divided by weight, 0.09 kg. And if you calculate this, you will be getting 0.61 mole. And that is the correct answer. Next, we get into the next topic or the next concept of this chapter, and that is your solubility. Okay. Now, what is solubility, everybody? When we talk about solubility, do you understand that solubility of a substance is basically the maximum amount, okay? The maximum amount of solute that can be dissolved in a specified amount of solvent. मतलब आपके पास थोड़ा बहुत solvent है मान लो, ठीक है? Let's imagine that you have a little bit of solvent, ठीक है? Or let's say that एक glass पानी है आपके पास. You have 1 glass of water. So that is a specified amount of solvent. Do you all agree? Sorry. If you have 1 glass of water, do you all understand that it is a specified amount of solvent? Now, in that specified amount of solvent, how much solute can you dissolve? आप कितने salt dissolve कर सकते हो? How much salt can you dissolve or how much sugar can you dissolve? Assuming that both of them are, solute, yes. That also at a specified temperature, that is what is called as solubility. Now, it does depend upon the nature of the solute and the solvent as well as temperature and pressure. Understood? Yes. Understood, everybody? Do you guys understand this? Yes or no, everyone? Yes or no? Okay. All right. Now, some solute, it dissolves and the concentration of the solution can directly increase, right? Is that right? Suppose that some solute is getting dissolved, okay? Some solute is getting dissolved. When the solute is getting dissolved, yes, when the solute is getting dissolved and the concentration of the solution is increasing, can I say that this process is called as dissolution? Because what am I literally doing? I am dissolving something. So can I call this as dissolution? Absolutely, I can. Now, suppose I'm a little crazy, okay? I'm feeling a little crazy or I'm feeling a little, let's do something. कुछ तूफानी करते हैं. So if we keep adding solute, if I keep adding more solute, if I keep adding more solute, don't you think that there will be a time? Arey, do you remember that biryani story I used to tell you? Do you remember that biryani story? See, I love biryani, right? So suppose I'm very hungry and it's, let's say that it is lunch time or dinner time. So I'm very hungry. If you keep biryani in front of me, what will happen? I will start drooling, correct? What will I do? I will start drooling. Is that right, everybody? Yes, I will start drooling. And at this point of time, I'm not at all satisfied. So I'm going to try and eat the biryani. Is that right? Now, if I keep eating, मैं खाते रहूं, there will be a point of time जब biryani यहाँ तक भर जाएगा and I will only feel like puking. Correct? Similar analogy apply here. So if I keep adding solute, there will be a time when some solute particles in the solution will collide with the solid state particles and they will get separate out of the solution. And at this point of time, what will happen? This is known as crystallization, and this happens when you have a super saturated solution. What you have when you have a super saturated solution. Okay. All right. Yes, guys. Now take a look at the effect of temperature. Okay, the solubility of a solid in liquid is significantly affected by temperature. What do you mean by significantly? That means it is really affected by temperature. Temperature can definitely affect the solubility of a solid in liquid. Okay. Now, in general, what happens is if in a nearly saturated solution, the dissolution process is endothermic. Guys. In this, although I have picked it up from your NCRT, you know that here Le Chatelier's principle is followed. And what does Le Chatelier tell you? Le Chatelier was a scientist, and about him you have studied in the chemical and ionic equilibrium chapter in class 11. Okay. All right, class 11 में पढ़ा है आप लोगों ने, ठीक है? So now I'll do a quick recap. Okay, I'll do a quick recap here. It states that if dynamic equilibrium, so try and understand it this way, everybody. Try and understand it this way. Suppose, look at this. So if I have a solution, okay, let me do it this way. Okay, if I have a solution, the solution basically has solute plus solvent. Is that right? And look at this part. I have written an equilibrium symbol. I have, equilibrium symbol appears here. Correct? Yes. So that means that this particular equation, consider this to be in a dynamic equilibrium. Now, when you disturb the dynamic equilibrium, by changing slight bit of conditions, मतलब मान लो, if I'm sitting like this, okay, now if somebody comes and if they, try to shake the chair like, what will happen? Will I not get irritated? I will get irritated. And why am I getting irritated? Because I want my situation to be just like how it was before. Is that right? Yes, why did I get irritated? And whoever it was who shook my chair, I'm going to be very pissed at them and I'm going to shout at them. After shouting, after some time, I'll be like, phew, I'll just sit quietly. Is that right? Yes, I will do that. So that means that, look at this. Understand this. So if it is a dynamic equilibrium, if you disturb it by changing the conditions, then what happens? The position of the equilibrium will shift towards, or it will try to counteract the change. So when somebody shook me like this, I wanted to counteract. I wanted to shout at them back and shook that person from within, isn't it? And that person will go like, I am shook. And then I'll be like, yeah, go touch some grass and come back. Right? Is that what is going to happen? That is what is going to happen. So here also the solubility of a solid in liquid is significantly affected by temperature. So in general, if in a nearly saturated solution, matlab the solution is almost satisfied, let's say, okay, the solution is done, the solution cannot take more solute. In a nearly saturated solution, the dissolution process is endothermic. That means that if you want to dissolve more solute, it is going to need more heat, because now it's done. Yes, now it's done. It cannot do it on its own, so it will require heat. That means it is endothermic. Hey, you tell me, don't you think that when you are adding solute, if you increase the temperature, more and more solute can be added? Arey baba, exactly, that is what it is telling, right? So the solubility should increase with rise in temperature. True that. So if you keep increasing the temperature, the solubility increases. Yes. But if it is exothermic, that means if you dissolve something and if it gives you heat, suppose acids. When acids are dissolved in water, what happens? Heat is given out. So now, if you heat it, if you increase the heat here, and then if you add more acid, then what will happen? The solubility will decrease. Yes, the solubility will decrease. Gotcha? Clear? Understanding? Great. So what is the effect of pressure? Pressure does not have any significant effect on the solubility of solids in liquid. But in case of gases, oh yeah. In case of gases, you will find that basically the solubility of gases are affected by change in pressure. If you increase the pressure, then what happens? The solubility of gases also increase. If you decrease the pressure, It flies away. Coca-Cola bottle, guys. Haven't you seen Coca-Cola bottle? It is under high pressure. That is why the gas is there. And if you shake it, brrr, everything comes out. But if you open the bottle, that sound comes. Why does that sound come? Because the gas is trying to escape. So solubility is decreasing per se. Do you understand this? Do you understand this? Okay. And because there is an effect of pressure, that is why now we have to learn a law which is called as Henry's law. Okay. So Sir Henry said that. Okay. What did Henry say? Henry said that the law states. Okay. Henry, what did he say? He said that at a constant temperature, the solubility of a gas is in a liquid is directly proportional to the partial pressure of the gas present above the surface of the liquid. Take a look at this. So if you have a container like this, you have a container like this is the piston, right? Okay. The blue color part, this is the gaseous part. This is where the vapor pressure exists. And this is the liquid part. Yes, the gray color part is the liquid part. So now you understand that if you have a liquid here, above the liquid, there is some pressure that is exerted by the gas. Do you all agree with this? Absolutely. Okay. So now what will happen if you increase the pressure? That means if you are trying to compress it, what will happen? The gases will get dissolved in the solute. Is that correct? Absolutely. So the law states that at a constant temperature, the solubility of a gas in a liquid is directly proportional to the partial pressure of the gas present above the surface of liquid or solution. The partial pressure of the gas in vapor phase is proportional to the mole fraction of the gas, that is chi, in the solution, and it is expressed as P is equal to Kh chi. And this is the mathematical representation of the Henry's law, everybody. What is this? This is the mathematical representation of a Henry's law, everybody. Do you all agree? Yes. Now, suppose you want to draw a graph. Okay, let's say that you want to draw a graph of this Henry's law. How will you draw it? How will you draw it? Suppose if this is your chi and let's say that this is your pressure. Okay, this is how it is happening. That chi is mole fraction, guys. So the graph will be sort of like this. Ta-da! This is how it will be. Okay. This is how it will be. All right. Now, it's not that we are learning about Henry's law just like this. Okay. Why are we learning about Henry's law? Because Henry's law does have several applications in industry and it does explain some really good biological phenomena as well. Okay. Some of the notable among them are, some of the most important among them are, everybody take a look at it. To increase the solubility of carbon dioxide. Yes, to increase the solubility of carbon dioxide in soft drinks and soda water, the bottle is sealed under high pressure. Yes, that is why I told you. Now, scuba divers, they must cope with high concentration of dissolved gases while they are breathing air at a really high pressure. You understand that, right? There is layers of water on top of you, everybody. So you tell me, when you are really underneath the water, the pressure will be extensively high. Is that right? The pressure is going to be extensively high underwater. So now when you are at such increased pressure, solubility of atmospheric gases in the blood will also increase. Do you not realize that? You are under extensive pressure and you have just studied from Henry's law that if you increase the pressure, solubility increases. So if you are under really, really high pressure, all the atmospheric gases that you have, oxygen, nitrogen, argon, helium, trace amount of whatever gases you have, all the solubility in your body has increased. Is that right? Absolutely. So this releases the dissolved gases and leads to the formation of bubbles of nitrogen in the blood. Yes, because the solubility has increased so much, it leads to the formation of bubbles of nitrogen in the blood. This, please read it very carefully because this comes in the examination way too many times. It gets repeated almost every year. Now this blocks, because there are bubbles now. So see, in your blood capillaries are very tiny things, right, in your body. You have read that in your biology when you were in 10th standard. Now don't tell me that, ma'am, we are all JE students, ma'am. It's okay. Even if you're JE, in 9th and 10th standard, you had biology, didn't you? Of course you did, right? In 9th and 10th standard, you had a biology, okay? Yes? All right. Okay, everybody. Okay, guys. All right. Yes. Now, as I was telling you, so capillaries are very tiny. Now, in the capillaries, if you have nitrogen bubbles, अरे बच्चे, how will blood flow? हाँ, blood को भी तो flow करने का जगह चाहिए. उस जगह पे अगर bubbles आ गया, तो how will blood flow? Blood will not be able to flow. That means that what can happen? People can die if blood is not flowing. Is that right? Absolutely. This blocks the capillaries and creates a medical condition which is known as bends. And these are very painful. They are, of course, dangerous to life. That means that people can die. And to avoid these bends, okay, what happens is, as well as the toxic effects of high concentration of nitrogen in the blood, the tanks that scuba divers they use now, they are filled with diluted helium, which is 11.7% helium, 56.2% nitrogen, and 32.1% oxygen. Okay, all right. And effect of temperature, solubility of solids in liquid decreases with rising temperature. If you increase the temperature of a liquid, in that whatever gases are there, you must have noticed, no? Acha, when you boil water, what happens? But bubbles, yes. What are these bubbles doing? It's basically the gases that are dissolved in water. The gases that are dissolved in water, they're trying to escape. So, if you increase the temperature, solubility of gases in liquids will decrease. Gotcha? Yes. So when dissolved, the gas molecules are present in liquid phase and the process of dissolution can be considered very similar to condensation, and heat is evolved in this process. As dissolution is an exothermic process, we know that dissolution is an exothermic process. Yes, that means that it will release heat. Yes, it will release heat. So the solubility should decrease with increase of temperature. Do you guys understand this? Yes. I suppose perhaps in Henry's law you have no doubt. Is that right, everybody? In case of Henry's law, I'm expecting that you guys have no doubt. Please tell me that you have no doubt. If you do have doubt, what you can do is you can definitely write it in the comment section, everybody. And I, of course, will look at the comment section. I always, I always reply to your comments. So let me know if you have any doubt, and I will definitely solve it for you. Okay, I will definitely solve it for you. Alrighty, guys. Now let us quickly go to Raoult's law. But just before Raoult's law, everybody, just before Raoult's law, everyone, I want to talk to you a little bit about the Dalton's law. What did Dalton say? Take a look at it. Dalton said that the solubility of a gas in a liquid solution is a function of partial pressure of the gas. Okay, what did he say? He said that the solubility of a gas in a liquid, if you have a glass of water, in that whatever gases are soluble, it is a function of partial pressure of the gas. So if we use the mole fraction of a gas in the solution as a measure of its solubility, then it can be said that the mole fraction of gas in the solution is proportional to the partial pressure of the gas of a solution. Now, Henry, when he mathematically expressed his law, he also took the help of Dalton's, whatever Dalton said. From there, he figured out that, I must write it like this. Okay, I must write it like this, and that's why he has written it like this. Gotcha. All right. Now, guys, we're going to step into Raoult's law. This is absolutely very, very, very important. Okay. This is absolutely very, 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 very important. So take a look at it. Raoult said that for a solution, suppose you have a solution of volatile liquids, the partial vapor pressure of each component of the solution. Yes. For a solution, if you have a volatile liquid, yes, volatile liquid as in something that evaporates, something that goes it flies away. Yes. For example, see, basically the liquids are volatile. Even if you have water is going to evaporate. You have alcohol, it's going to evaporate. You have Dettol, it's going to evaporate. Savlon, it's going to evaporate. You have the sanitizers that we used to use. All of these are going to evaporate, right? So for a solution of volatile liquids, if you have volatile liquids, the partial vapor pressure of each component of the solution, it is going to be directly proportional to its mole fraction present in solution. So that means that if you have component 1, your P1 is directly proportional to Chi1. And this can be written as P1 is equal to P1 naught. What is P1 naught? P1 naught is the partial pressure of pure solvent. Similarly, if you have a component 2, that means that P2 is equal to what? P2 not chi2. Can I write it like this? Absolutely. Now, what was it that Dalton also said something? Remember, Dalton said Dalton's law of partial pressure. He said that the total pressure over the solution phase in the container, what will it be? It will be the sum of the partial pressures of the components of the solution, and that can be written as, everybody, P total. P total can be written as PT. Can I write it like this? That means it will become P1 plus P2. Correcto? Absolutely. So now my P total also becomes, look at this, it will become P1 naught chi 1 plus P2 naught chi 2. Is that correct? Absolutely. Now guys, what is chi 1? Do you remember from your 11th standard? I hope perhaps you remember this, everybody, from your 11th standard, that mole fraction. Yes, all the summation of mole fraction are supposed to be equal to 1. Correct? Yes. So that means that, can I write it like, instead of writing it as chi 1, can I write it as P1 naught multiplied with 1 minus chi 2 plus P2 naught chi 2. Can I write it like this? And if I write it like this, that means I can also write it as, take a look at it. I can also write it as P1 naught. Yes, I can also write it as P1 naught. So P1 naught multiplied with 1 is P1 naught, correct, plus. Then minus P1 naught chi 2 plus P2 naught chi 2. Can I write it like this? Yes. Now what will happen is, I will have to take chi 2 as a common. Is that right, everybody? Yes. Can I do this? I can do this. So take a look at it. I can also write it as P1 naught plus, just writing. Look at this. Look at this. Hold on. You will notice. Then I can write it as P2 naught minus P1 naught multiplied with chi 2. Can I write it like this? Absolutely. Absolutely. And from this particular equation, there are three conclusions that you can draw, my dear students. Okay. There are three conclusions that you can come across, and the three conclusions are that total vapor pressure of the solution, it can be related to the mole fraction of any one of the component, right? Because if it is chi 2, that means chi 2 is also equal to 1 minus chi 1. So you can do that. It can be related to the mole fraction of any of the component, right? Second conclusion is that total vapor pressure of the solution, it varies linearly with the mole fraction of component 2. What do you mean total vapor pressure of over the solution? It linearly varies with the mole fraction of component 2. I'm going to show you, I'm going to draw the graph and show it to you as well. Depending on the vapor pressure of the pure component 1 and 2, total vapor pressure of the solution, it either decreases or increases with the increase of the mole fraction of component 1. Gotcha? Now, if I have to draw the graph is going to look like this. Okay, the graph is going to look like this. Take a look at it. This is how I'm going to draw the graph. This is how I'm going to draw the graph. Take a look at it. Yes. Suppose now here chi of 1. Okay, the component 1 is equal to 1. Now you know that mole fraction, summation of all the mole fraction is equal to 1. That means that if chi of 1 is equal to 1, chi of 2 is supposed to be 0. Is that right? Absolutely. And here if I write chi of 1 is equal to 0, that means that chi of 2 is supposed to be equal to 1. Is that right? Absolutely. Now I'm going to do this, Now I'm going to do this. Take a look at this. Yes, can I draw it like this? Absolutely. Then for this, I'm going to draw it like this. Yes, all right. Now, what is going to be my P total? My P total is going to be this. Is that right? Yes. So, P total is going to be equal to P1 plus P2. Agreed, everybody? Agreed. Now, what is this? This is going to be your P2 and this is going to be your P1. Why? Because this is chi 1, this is chi 1 here, this is chi 2 here. So, you get the point, everybody? Do you get the point, everyone? Yes or no, guys? Yes or no? Let me know. Yes or no, everyone? So this is how the graph looks like. Okay. This is how the graph looks like. Do you get it? Do you get it? Do you get it? Achha. Now, you know what? You know what you can do? What you can do is, yes. So sometime back only, we said that, we said that total vapor pressure over the solution. Okay, this is done. Graph is done. Total vapor pressure over the solution can be related to the mole fraction of any one of the component. Yes, done. By chance, let's say that the composition The composition of vapor phase. I am not talking about the liquid phase. Let's say that we want to find out the composition of vapor phase in equilibrium with the solution. Okay. How can we determine that? Can you determine that also by the partial pressures of the component? Now suppose, okay, suppose I say that if instead of writing chi1 and chi2, we will be confused. I'm writing that if y1 and y2 are the mole fractions, okay, if y1 and y2 are the mole fractions, of the components 1 and 2 respectively, okay, of 1 and 2 in the vapor phase. This time in the vapor phase, guys, not in the solution phase, okay, in the vapor phase. Then now can I use Dalton's law? Yes. Using Dalton's law, of partial pressure, do you think I can write it as P1 is equal to Y1 P total? Y1 P total, can I write it like this? Absolutely. And I can also write it as P2 is equal to Y2 P total. Am I right? Absolutely correct. I am right. Right, everybody. Is that right? Yes, yes, or no, guys. You get it? All right. Moving ahead, now you see that the Raoult's law, it can also be written as a special case of Henry's law. Now there is a lot of things written here. Don't worry about it. Can I just compare it and show it to you, everyone? I think you will understand it very easily. Yes. I think you're going to understand this very, very, very easily, everybody. You want to take a look at it? Yes, look at this. Now, you know that in Henry's law, what have you studied? In case of Henry's law, you have studied that P is equal to KH chi. Is that right? Yes. And in case of Raoult's law, you have studied that P1 is equal to P1 naught chi. Now from this, can I say that this P1 naught and KH, the formula is looking very similar. So can I write that KH is equal to P1 naught? I can, and this is sometimes called as the special case of Henry's law. Raoult's law is actually the special case of Henry's law, everybody. Do you guys understand this? Yes or no, guys? Do you guys understand this? Yes or no? Amazing. Now we're going to get into little, yes, water that are, high tide, everybody. So, vapor pressure of solutions of solids and liquids. Okay, we're going to talk about solids and liquid, everybody. Now tell me something. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw two diagrams. Okay, I'm going to draw two containers here. Let me draw two containers. Beautiful containers I'm going to draw, you see. Look at this. Beautiful containers I'm going to draw. Is that right? Okay, all right. Now in this container, let's say that this is my solution phase. Let's say, okay, this is my solution phase. All right. Yes. And here I also have the vapor phase. Is that right, everybody? Yes, this is my vapor phase. Let's say this is my vapor phase. Let's say, okay. All right, everybody. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Now, imagine everybody. Okay. Imagine everyone. I am also going to, okay, I'm going to write down something here. Okay. Imagine this is my component 1. This is my component 1 and this is pure. Okay. In that I have added some, this is pure. Now in this what I have is I have solute and I have solvent as well. Okay. And my solute this time, everybody take a look at it. It's a solid. That means that here I have some amount of solid as well. Okay. I have some amount of solid as well. This pink color is your solute. Yes. Does that work, everybody? Yes. Does that work? Great. Now tell me something. If I add a solid in the liquid is volatile. Is the solid also volatile? Do you think that the solid is also going to evaporate? No, right? No, is that true, everybody? It is not going to, isn't it? It is not going to. So can I write, everybody? Can I write that the vapor pressure of the solution at a given temperature, it is found to be lower than the vapor pressure of the pure solvent at the same temperature? Do you all agree with me? Absolutely. So I'm going to write here what I'm going to write, that the vapor pressure VP, can I write it? लिख दो VP, VP समझ आ जाएगा. The vapor pressure of the solution, the vapor pressure of the solution at a given temperature, at a given temperature is found to be, is found to be lower than, lower than the vapor pressure, is found to be lower than the vapor pressure, lower than the vapor pressure of the pure solvent, of the pure solvent, okay, of the pure solvent at the same temperature, at the same temperature. आ गया समझ? Everybody, do you all agree what I'm trying to say? Do you all understand what I have written here? Yes or no, everybody? Great. Okay. All right. Now what happens is everybody, okay, try and understand this, that now we're getting into a little more tougher. There is something called as ideal and non-ideal solutions. So what do you mean by ideal and non-ideal solutions? So the solutions which obey Raoult's law. Raoult's law was what? P1 is equal to P1 multiplied, P1 not multiplied with chi, isn't it? So if a solution obeys Raoult's law over the entire range of concentration, we call them to be as ideal solution. And here look at it. The solution which do not obey Raoult's law over the entire range of concentration, they're called as non-ideal solution. Now, AB interaction. What is AB interaction? A is your solvent, B is your solute. The interaction in the solution are same as original. That means that the A is solvent-solvent interaction and solute-solute interaction, whatever it was, the solute and the solvent interaction is also looking the same, okay? But in this case, the forces of attraction between the solute-solute, solvent-solvent is going to be different from the solute-solvent interaction. Delta H mix, that means the enthalpy after mixing is going to be 0. The enthalpy, the volume after mixing also is 0. That means there is no change in the difference. Whatever was the initial volume, after you have mixed it, it remains as the same, everybody. However, that's not the case here. Here you will see that delta H mix is not equal to 0. Delta V mix is also not equal to 0. Examples for ideal solution is N-heptane and hexane, or it can be benzene plus toluene. And here the example is water plus ethanol. So when you mix ethanol and water, of course the volume increases, but in this case you will not see that the volume is increasing, right? Now, when we talk about non-ideal solution, you have two types of non-ideal solution. Okay, you have two different types of non-ideal solution. What are they, everybody? The two different types of non-ideal solution are, take a look at it. One is where positive deviation. What is positive deviation? The solute-solute, that means the B-B interaction, and the solvent-solvent AA interaction is more than solute-solvent interaction. Here the example is acetone plus ethanol. Now, when we talk about negative deviation, we say that when we talk about negative deviation, you understand that the solute-solute and the solvent-solvent interaction is less than the solute-solvent interaction. And here the example is phenol plus aniline, okay, because they get a hydrogen bonding here. What happens? The interaction, this interaction is less than the solute solvent interaction. You get the point, everybody? Yes, amazing. All right. So here I have written it down. It is typed out as well, and there are many examples, everybody. Examples of positive deviation is chloroform in water, ethanol and CCl4, methanol and chloroform, benzene and methanol, acetic acid and toluene, acetone and ethanol. All of these examples are here. You can go through them on your own. This PDF, I'll be providing it to my Telegram channel. So don't forget to subscribe to the Telegram channel. Right below this video in the description box, the first link is for the Telegram channel. So please join it, everybody, because that's where you will get the notes. Moving ahead, azeotropes, okay? There exist some solutions for particular composition of which the mole fraction of compounds in liquid and vapor state is same. What do you mean? It means that there are some solution, मतलब ऐसे भी कुछ solutions होते हैं, ठीक है, for particular composition of which the mole fraction of components, mole fraction of the compound, जिस भी compound के बारे में हम बात कर रहे हैं उसकी mole fraction जो होगी, that in the liquid and the vapor state is exactly the same. So this type of mixture is termed as azeotropic mixture. They are binary mixtures and they boil at a constant temperature at a certain composition. What do? They boil at a constant temperature at a certain composition. Understood or not understood? Okay. All right. Now the solution. Now let me write something here as well. Okay. Now let me write something here as well. The solution which boils, take a look at it. The solution which show a large positive deviation, a large positive deviation from Raoult's law form minimum boiling azeotrope. We call it boiling azeotropes. Okay. So this is going to form minimum boiling azeotrope. Example here is, what is the example here? The example here is, my dear student, ethanol plus water. Ethanol plus water is a beautiful example of minimum boiling azeotrope. That means that this solution, where it is going to show you a large deviation from Raoult's law. It does not follow Raoult's law and it is going to show you a large positive deviation from Raoult's law. Hence, this is going to be minimum boiling azeotrope. So remember this: large positive deviation, minimum boiling azeotrope. Okay. Large negative deviation, it is going to be maximum boiling azeotrope. So let me write that also here. Let me write that also here. After that, some more questions are coming up. Okay. The solution which shows a large negative deviation from Raoult's law form maximum boiling azeotrope. What is the example? The example is nitric acid plus toluene. Nitric acid, sorry, not toluene, nitric acid plus water. Nitric acid plus water is going to be a maximum boiling azeotrope. Guys, do you all understand this, everybody? Do you understand this? Great. All right. Now moving on. Here is a question for you. The question is, on mixing 20 milliliter of acetone with 30 milliliter of chloroform, the total volume of the solution is, guys, everybody take a look at it. Acetone and chloroform. Where is it? Acetone and chloroform. Do you have it? Nowhere. I don't have this example. Acetone and ethanol I have written, benzene plus toluene I have written. Chalo, theek hai, let me tell you. Okay, let me tell you. Actually, what happens is that acetone plus chloroform, it shows a negative deviation from Raoult's law, and that means that the final volume is going to be lesser than 50 ml. So option A is your correct answer. Let's go to the next question. Which of the following is true for Henry's constant? It decreases with temperature, it increases with temperature, independent of temperature, or it does not depend on nature of gases. I think the correct answer is it increases with temperature, isn't it? Yes. What is true for Henry's constant? Henry's constant, it increases with temperature, everybody. Option B is the correct answer. Next question. An azeotropic solution of two liquids has a boiling point lower than either of the two when it shows. An azeotropic solution of two liquids has a boiling point lower than either of the two when it shows a positive deviation from Raoult's law, shows a negative deviation from Raoult's law, shows no deviation from Raoult's law, or is it saturated? Okay, all right. So what is it going to be? What is going to be the answer? Guys, the answer is going to be, of course, option A. It is going to show a positive deviation from Raoult's law. Why? Because interactions are weaker. Interactions are weaker after mixing the two liquids. So vapor pressure increases and that decreases the boiling point, which forms a minimum boiling point azeotrope. Gotcha? Clear? All right. Next question, everybody. What happens when acetone is added to pure ethanol? I have written down the answer just so that no wasting time you will be given. You would just have to go through the answers. Don't waste your time, guys. A mixture of ethanol and acetone shows the positive deviation from the Raoult's law. And the vapor pressure of such a solution is higher than that predicted by Raoult's law due to weak intermolecular interactions between ethanol and acetone. The solution exhibits positive deviation. Okay, when you add acetone to pure ethanol, it will show positive deviation. And here the example is also written. Everybody, look at this: acetone plus ethanol. It is going to show you positive deviation. That is the answer, right? You know this. Chalo, theek hai. Moving ahead, everybody, moving ahead. Acha, this question I'm going to give it to you as a homework because you just have to write differences between ideal and non-ideal solution, which is already there in the previous slide. So just copy it down and do it on your own, guys. Homework question, one or two homework question I'm going to give you. All right, please do it. Please do it. It will be good writing practice for your answer because I know that I have been teaching you for JEE, isn't it? Yes. So when I teach you for JEE, we all are very used to just marking the answers. Everything is what? Everything is your MCQs, right? So you're very used to, marking the answers and you don't know the art of writing the answers. So please write it down, practice it so that you get better marks, all right? Yes? Okay. Next, guys. Here, answer the following question. State Henry's law and explain why are the tanks used by scuba divers filled with air diluted with helium, 56.2% nitrogen and 32.1% oxygen. Okay, look at this. The partial pressure of the gas in vapor phase is proportional to the mole fraction of the gas in the solution. What is this? This is your Henry's law. Now the pressure underwater is so high that the solubility of gases in blood increases, and when the diver comes to the surface, the pressure decreases. So does the solubility, causing bubbles of nitrogen in blood, and this causes bends. To avoid this bends, what do? The dilution is done. Look at the option B option. The B question is assume that argon exerts a partial pressure of 6 bar. Calculate the solubility of argon gas in water. Given Henry's law constant for argon dissolved in water. KH is equal to 40 K bar. See, we know that Henry's law is P is equal to KH chi. So mole fraction of argon in water is chi is equal to P divided by KH. Pressure is given to you as 6 bar. So 6 divided by 40 into 10 to the power 3. That means it is going to be 1.5 into 10 to the power minus 4. That's it. Okay, done. Calculation is done. Next question, guys. The partial pressure of ethane over a saturated solution containing 6.56 into 10 to the power minus 2 gram of ethane is 1 bar. So this is case 1. And if the solution contains 5.02 into 10 to the power minus 2 gram of ethane, then what will be the partial pressure of the gas? Now you know that M is equal to KHP. Yes. So we can write it as M is equal to, that means what are they saying? The partial pressure of ethane over a saturated solution. Saturated solution. Okay, saturated solution. So mass. So that means 6.56 into 10 to the power minus 2 gram is equal to KH multiplied with 1 bar. So what will be KH? KH will be this. In the second case, what is given to you? If the solution now contains 5.0 into 10 to the power minus 2 gram, this is equal to KH. We have just calculated, that is 6.56 into 10 to the power minus 2 multiplied with P if you do. Now from here you can calculate the pressure, and the pressure is going to be 0.762 bar. That's it. Easy peasy biryani tasty. Right, next. Okay. Now we have come to colligative properties, guys. So properties that depend on the number of solute particles irrespective of the nature, does not depend on the nature, and it does not depend on the nature of sorry, too much of a lot happened. Okay, let me say this again. The properties that depend on the number of solute particles, what do? They depend on the number of solute particles. Okay, that means that in these cases, you will be able to see the terms that are related to molarity, the terms that are related to molality, and all of these. Why? Because that depends on number of solute particles. Irrespective, that means that it does not depend on the nature relative to the total number of particles present in the solution. Okay, it does not depend on the nature relative to the total number of particles present in the solution. And these kind of properties, they are called as colligative properties. There are 4 different colligative properties. Maximum number of questions will come from here, so please pay attention. This is the most important part of your chapter. So you have relative lowering of vapor pressure, you have elevation in boiling point, you have depression in freezing point, and you have osmotic pressure. So let's start with the relative lowering in of vapor pressure. Shall we, everybody? These are the most important part of the chapter, everybody. So please pay attention. Once again, everybody, what are colligative property? Colligative property, they depend on the number of solute particle. Yes. All right. So ratio of the number of solute particles to the number of solvent molecules, okay, to the number of solvent molecules of a solution, that's what it depends on. You can say this. All right, everybody. Yes. Now, guys, let's talk about relative lowering of vapor pressure. So you know what will happen? Let me first draw my two containers. Can I do this? Yeah. Let me draw the two containers that I have. Okay. So I have, let's say, one container here. This is one container, and you know, just because I have an iPad, what I can do is I can always copy this and paste it. Then it looks like exactly same, isn't it? Yes, it does. Okay. Now let's say that this is my pure solvent. What is this? This is my pure solvent. Okay. All right. Yes. So this is going to be my pure solvent. It looks like this, Hannah. It looks like this. Okay. So the pure solvent, that means that here I will have what, P1 naught, P1 naught. Is that right, everybody? Yes. Now this is where I have the solvent as well as, as well as I have some solute. I have some solute here. Correct? Yes. Now here what do I have? I have here P1, pressure 1. Okay. Now you will notice that there is a lowering of vapor pressure. Why lowering of vapor pressure, bache? Please try and understand this. See, here I had pure solvent. So each and every particle that was here on the surface, yes, there was, there was a pressure that was exerted. Now see, some of the space is blocked by the solute. Some of the space is blocked by the solute, and that means that the solute is not allowing the solvent to vaporize. So there is a little less vapor pressure. Do you all agree? Yes, do you all agree that there is a little less vapor pressure? Is that right, everybody? Yes. So now, can I say that lowering of vapor pressure? Can I say that lowering of vapor pressure depends depends only on the concentration of the solute particles, of the solute particles, and is independent of, what is it independent of? It is independent of their identity. Does not matter whatever is the identity, just because there is solute particles, क्योंकि वो solute particles है, वो solvent को evaporate नहीं होने दे रहा है. Because you have the solute particles, it is not going to allow the vaporization of the solvent particles, right? Okay, so my chair makes a lot of noise. I must fix it. Don't worry, I'll fix it very soon. Lowering of vapor pressure depends only on the concentration of the solute particles and is independent of their identity, and is independent of their identity. Do you guys understand this? I have written it. Take a look at it now. Lowering of vapor pressure depends only on the concentration of the solute particles and is independent of their identity. Does not matter salt hai, sugar hai, रेत hai, kya डाले वो, does not matter. Whatever you have put, it does not matter. It only depends on the solute particles. The more amount of solid particles you have, lesser will be the vapor pressure. Okay, what will happen? Lesser will be the vapor pressure. Do you get it? Do you get it, everybody? Yes or no? Understood? Okay. All right. Chal. So now here, tell me something. Okay. Now here, tell me something, everybody. So this is my pure solvent, right? This is my pure solvent. So for P1, yes, for P1, can I write it from Raoult's law? If you remember, it is going to be what? P1 naught multiplied with chi1. Is that true? Yes, it is. It is true, right? Okay. Also tell me something, that this P1 and P1 naught that you have, right? You have also P1 naught. Suppose I want to find out the delta, that is the difference in the pressure, okay? Difference in the partial pressure. Suppose I want to find delta P1. So my delta P1 is going to be pure solvent ka partial pressure minus P1. Do you all agree? Yes, because I just said that lowering of vapor pressure will happen. So the pure solvent basically has higher partial pressure. Do you all agree? Yes. Okay. Now can I write it as? Can I write it as P1 naught? I will write it as P1 naught. But P1 is equal to P1 naught multiplied with Chi1. Is that right? Yes. So that means I can write it as minus P1 naught multiplied with Chi1. Do you all agree with this? Yes. So then my delta P1 becomes, I can take P1 naught as common. And then I can write it as 1 minus Chi1. Is that true? Yes, absolutely. I also know that, everybody, all of us, we know that Chi2 is equal to what? 1 minus Chi1. Do you all agree with this? Oh yes, we do agree with this, right? So then my delta P1 becomes what? P1 naught multiplied with Chi2. Do you all agree with this? Yes, absolutely we do. Great. Acha, now time to draw a line here. Okay, I'm coming here. Okay. So now chi2 is what, bache log? What is chi2? Chi2 is the mole fraction of the component 2. So that means it is going to be N2 divided by total number of moles N1 plus N2. Agreed? Yes, ma'am. Agreed. Now, can I write it as a delta P1? Delta P1 divided by P1 naught, which is equal to N2, which is equal to, let's say, which is equal to chi2. That means that I can also write it as delta P1 is equal to what? Delta P1 from here. Look at this, delta P1 is equal to, look at this. So delta P1 can be written as P1 naught minus P1 divided by P1 naught is equal to, can I write it as N2 divided by N1? Divided by N1 plus N2. Can I write it like this? Absolutely, I can write it like this. I can write it like this. Now suppose I want to tweak it a little bit, okay? I want to tweak it a little bit. What am I doing? I want to tweak it a little bit, okay? And suppose I have a very dilute solution, okay? Suppose I have a very dilute solution. So much so that the solute particle does not even matter, okay? So much so that the solute particle does not matter at all. Sorry, the narcissistic in me is only looking at myself and the camera. That happens. That happens, right? Yeah, that happens. Okay, anyway, so as I was telling you. Now suppose I have a very dilute solution, okay? So if I have a very dilute solution, let's write it down. For a dilute solution, I will move, you know that because I'm sitting, I cannot really move. I'll move the page in some time, okay? Let me write it down. Now for a dilute solution here, you understand that N2 is going to be very less than N1. Is that agreed? Yes. And if that is the case, then can I write my P1 naught minus P1 divided by P1 naught is equal to N2. Here I will have to consider N2 divided by N1 because N2 is very less. Can I write it N2 divided by N1? Absolutely. Why not? I can write it like this. And then when I write this, now can I relate it to molarity? I can. Look at this. I can write it like this. P1 naught minus P1 divided by P1 naught is equal to W2 multiplied with M1 divided by M2 multiplied with W1. Agreed. Agreed, everybody? Take a look at it. Yes, agreed. Do you all agree that we can write it like this? Absolutely, we can write it like this. And this is the formula. So they can ask you in the exam hall that derive a formula and relate molarity with relative lowering of vapor pressure. Then this is exactly what you're gonna do. Okay, this is exactly what you're gonna do. Alrighty, alrighty. Acha. Now we're going to go to the next topic, that is elevation in boiling point. We're going to do this as well, very fast, and everyone take a look at it. I'm going to draw my container. Ta-da! This is the magic when you have iPad, right? Yes. Now some of the students will be, ma'am, you're rich, ma'am. No, no. I could only buy an iPad. That's it. I still cannot have a smart board. For that, if only you stay connected with me and subscribe to my channel and everything, only then I can do it. Only then I will probably be able to get a smart board. So if you want to see me on a smart board, if you want to see me growing, then subscribe to the channel. Yeah, grow this channel. All right. Okay, guys, moving ahead. Now, here again, what am I going to have? I'm going to have my pure solvent. This is my pure solvent. And suppose the pure solvent boils at a temperature which is TB naught, okay? Let's say that it is TB naught. Okay. Pure solvent boils at a temperature TB naught. Agreed? Okay. And here what I have is, I have this, okay. And with that, I again have some solute. I have some solute particles. Now, in this case, this will be the TB of the solution. Do you all agree? This will be the boiling point of the solution. Am I right, everybody? Yes. Now, here what will happen is, you will notice that the boiling point, the boiling point of a solution, is always going to be, higher, is always higher than, yes, is always higher than that of the boiling point, then that of the boiling point of the pure solvent. Yes, it is always going to be higher than the boiling point of the pure solvent. Why so? Because vapor pressure has decreased. Yes, because vapor pressure has decreased. Okay. Boiling point of the pure solvent. One second. Yes. In which the solution is prepared. This is your elevation in boiling point. So basically what is happening here is, everybody understand this, we are going to find delta TB. Why? We want to find the difference in the boiling point. See, the pure solvent was boiling at TB naught, and this is TB solution, TB of the solution. So can I write it as TB? It is going to be higher, TB is going to be higher. Yes, the boiling point is always going to be higher. So can I write it as TB minus TB naught? If I do this, I can also say that delta TB is directly proportional to molality. We write this. We know this, okay? We know this. Yes. Now, to remove the proportionality sign, I want to remove the proportionality sign. If I want to remove the proportionality sign, that means that I have to write it as delta TB is equal to KBM. And this KB, my dear student, this is called as ebullioscopic constant. What is it called? It is called as ebullioscopic constant. Okay? All right. Now what happens? Molality. Because you have a molality, my dear students, you tell me, can you write it like this? One second. Huh. Because you have molality, can you write it like this? Delta TB is equal to KB multiplied with, what is molality ka formula? What is molality ka formula? Is it W2 multiplied with 1000 divided by M2 multiplied with W1? Is that right? Yes. Okay. Just for your sake, I'm writing it down that molality is what, bache log? Molality is number of moles of solute. What is it? Number of moles of solute divided by mass of solvent in kg, isn't it? Mass of solvent in kg. Now, suppose you are not given the mass in kg, then what do you have to do? You're going to write it as M is equal to W2 divided by M2 divided by W1. W1 divided by 1000. This is how you write, and this becomes this formula. Agreed, everyone? Yes. Is that something that you can do? Is that something that you can do? Absolutely. So this is done. Okay. Next, we come across depression and freezing point. And once again, what am I going to do? I'm going to draw my two containers here. Yes, the containers are very, very important. Okay. Once I've drawn the container, now look at this. What I'm going to do is, again, same thing, everyone. So this is going to be my pure solvent. This is my pure solvent. If I have pure solvent, it is going to freeze at TF naught. Is that right? Yes. Here I have the solution. So that means I do have some solute particles as well. Yes, I do have solute particles as well. So this is going to be your TF of the solution. Is that right? Absolutely. Now here what happens is that the freezing point of a substance, may be defined as, how can you define it? May be defined as the, maybe defined as the, how do we define it? Maybe defined as the temperature, a temperature at which, at which the vapor pressure, at which the vapor pressure of the substance, I'll move guys, I'll move, just let me write this down. I'll move this, yes. Vapor at which the vapor pressure of the vapor pressure of the substance is in its, one second, freezing point of a substance may be defined as the temperature at which the vapor pressure of the substance in its liquid phase, in its liquid phase is equal to its vapor pressure of the solid phase. ये याद कर लेना बच्चा, ठीक है? चलो, now similarly we are going to do this, okay? Let's say that we want to find the freezing point difference. Yes, so freezing point difference will be basically TF naught minus TF. Is that right? Yes, everybody, absolutely. So now I can write delta TF is directly proportional to molality. That means that to remove the proportionality sign, I can write it as delta TF is equal to KF multiplied with M. What is KF? KF is called as cryoscopic constant. Don't cry, don't cry. Cryoscopic constant. What is this? This is called as cryoscopic constant. Okay. All right, everybody. Amazing. Let's go from here. Now you know again that molality is equal to what? W2 divided by M2 divided by W1 divided by 1000. Is that right? So that means that I can write delta TF is equal to KF multiplied with W2 multiplied with 1000 divided by M2 multiplied with W1. Can I write it like this? I absolutely can. I absolutely can. All right. Yes. Now, because it is board examination, we don't really have to understand the relation between KF and KB. Yes, KF and KB are pretty similar, everyone. You can write it down. Yes, these are the formulas, everybody, as you all can see. Now, here, there are two graphs that we have to notify. Okay, there are two graphs that we must note down. One second, yeah. Yes, two graphs that we're going to take a look at. Just gonna write graph here. Sorry, I should have gotten a page, but I did not. Okay. So let me write down here. We're going to take a look at the graphs once. Okay. So, okay. Now I'm going to show you the graph for TB as well as TF, and you will understand what is happening here. Take a look at it. So, this is how the graph we're going to draw. Okay. So this side on the y-axis, let's take the vapor pressure. Okay. And here let's take the temperature. Okay. When we take the temperature, we see that the graph sort of comes out to be like this. One is this and the other is this. Okay. All right. Now this pink one is for the pure solvent. Okay. And this one is for the solution. Okay. Now what happens, everybody? If you draw it like this, correct? Okay. All right. Okay. One second. Let me draw this a little further. Ha. Now when I draw it like this also comes, look at this. See, for the solution, it is higher. Do you see? For the solution, it is higher. And for the pure solvent, it is lower. Do you notice that, everybody? For the solution, it is higher. And for the pure solvent, it is lower. And this gap that you have, this is what is going to give you delta TB. This is what is going to give you delta TB. Understood? So this is going to be your TB naught. This is going to be your TB. Okay. Similar to this, let me draw it for your uh, depression and freezing point as well. This time, once again, you're going to take temperature here and you're going to take vapor pressure on the y-axis. Now, what will you have? Now, what will you have? Once again, for the solution, I'm going to draw it like this. Is that okay? Is that okay? For the solution, I'm going to draw like this. And for the pure solvent, let's say that I draw it like this. Is that okay? All right, everybody? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes? Okay. Now, tell me something. Now, tell me something. The pure solvent, right? The pure solvent does not have any other solute, correct? Yes, the pure solvent does not have any other solute, but the solution does have. So once again, everybody, this is for your solution and this is for your pure solvent. Once the pure solvent freezes, yes, once the pure solvent freezes, this is where it freezes, is that right? Yes, but the solution also has some solute which is not further getting frozen, is that right? The solid is going to remain as it is. The solid is going to remain as it is that correct? Very nice, very nice. Okay. Now what will happen is, check it out, everybody. Check it out. So this is the point where the pure solvent is getting frozen. Agreed? Okay. And the solution, I'm just going to increase this curve like this, okay, draw it like this. So you will see that the solution is freezing here. Now you notice that the pure solvent is TF not here, this is your TF, is that correct, everybody? Yes, and this difference in the temperature, this will become your delta TF. Agreed, everybody? Agreed or not agreed? This is how the graph will look like. Yes, this is how the graph will look like. Absolutely, absolutely, this is how the graph will look like. Okay, now guys, we are coming to osmotic pressure, but before we understand osmotic pressure, tell me, what is osmosis? What is osmosis, everybody? The movement of solvent molecules from a region of high, remind you everyone, movement of solvent molecules. Chalo, actually, you know what, let me write this down so that you remember it. Okay, what did I say? I said the movement of solvent molecules, yes, from a region of higher concentration, from a region of its higher concentration, of solvents higher concentration, okay, of its higher concentration, to lower concentration through a semi-permeable membrane is osmosis. Understand this. Once you understand osmosis, only then you can understand osmotic pressure. Now, if you want to stop the osmotic pressure, yes, now if you want to stop the osmotic pressure, the pressure that is required to stop the osmosis, that is called as your osmotic pressure. So write that down as well. Okay, write that down, everybody. What is osmotic pressure? What is osmotic pressure? The pressure that just about stops the flow, okay? That just stops the flow of solvent is called OP, that is osmotic pressure. Gotcha? Clear? And this is denoted by pi is equal to CRT, where C is concentration, R is your gas constant, and temperature is temperature. Achha, now tell me that can C be, that is C is concentration, concentration can be written as N divided by VRT? And if I write it like this, do you remember that this looks like ideal gas equation, pi V is equal to nRT? Is that right? Absolutely. It is right. And you can also write it as pi v is equal to n, number of moles. Yes, n. N can be written as what, guys? N can be written as W2 divided by M2. Let's say that this is N2. So W2 divided by M2 multiplied with RT. Can I write it like this? Absolutely, I can write it like this. Okay. Yes. Now, after this, in the case of osmotic pressure, you also learn about isotonic solution, hypotonic solution, and hypertonic solution. I haven't written the definition. I'm just going to tell you. Please note it down, everybody. Two solutions, when they have the same osmotic pressure, they're called as isotonic solution. Okay. What is hypotonic and hypertonic? When two solutions are being compared, when you compare two solutions, okay, the one that has higher osmotic pressure, that will be hypertonic, and the one that has lower osmotic pressure, that will be called as hypotonic solution. Gotcha? Clear hai? ठीक है. Then we come across abnormal molar mass. A molar mass that is either lower or higher than the expected or normal value, that is called as abnormal molar mass. And it is given by I, which is your Van 't Hoff factor. So I is Van 't Hoff factor, which is equal to normal molar mass divided by abnormal molar mass, or it is observed colligative property divided by calculated colligative property, or it is total number of moles of particle after association or dissociation divided by number of moles of particle after association or dissociation. Now, let's take a look at the questions. So, in which of the following cases blood cells with shrink? See, you know that the fluid inside the blood cell is isotonic with 0.9% NaCl solution when it is placed in water containing more than 0.9% mass, more than 0.9% mass by volume of NaCl solution, it is going to shrink. So option A, when placed in water containing more than 0.9% mass by volume NaCl solution, it is going to shrink. Next question, everyone. This is the homework question. See, till now I have only given you two homework questions, everybody. Only two homework questions. Now look at this. A 5% solution of cane sugar, a 5% solution of cane sugar, molar mass is equal to 342, is isotonic with 1% solution of a substance X. The molar mass of X is, look at this. Since it is given that it is 5% solution, so that means that it is going, we have 5 gram cane sugar in 100 milliliter solution. Very good. So molarity is going to be 5 divided by 342 multiplied with 1000 divided by 100. Agreed? Yes. So pi 1 is equal to C1 RT. Agreed? Yes. So that means that 5 divided by 342 multiplied with 1000 divided by 100 multiplied with R2. And here I can write, everybody, this is my pi 2. So pi 2 is equal to C2 RT. Now I do not know what is C2. So can I write it as 1 divided by mx? Mx is, anything. It can be the second component basically, right? This multiplied with 1000 divided by 100 multiplied with R2. Now this and RT will get cancelled. Do you all agree? Look at this. Look at this. Same term. Is that right? Same term you have. 1000 divided by RT. This and this will get cancelled. Now the solutions are isotonic. So pi 1 is equal to pi 2. That means 5 divided by 342 is equal to 1 divided by mx. So 5 divided by 342 is equal to 1 divided by mx, and mx is equal to 342 by 5, which is equal to 68.4 gram per mole. Okay. Next, the boiling point of a 0.2 molar solution of a non-electrolyte in water is Kb for in water is what, and Kb for water is 0.52 Kelvin kg per mole. So molality is equal to 0.2 given to you. Kb is equal to given to you 0.52. So 0.2 moles of non-electrolyte solution in 1 kg of water. That means delta Tb is equal to Kbm. This is the formula we know. Kb is 0.52. Molality is 0.2. So delta Tb becomes 0.104. Delta Tb is the difference. If you want to calculate Tb now, Tb, see, water, it is non-electrolyte in water. So water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. 100 plus the delta Tb is going to give you Tb of the solution. Understood? And option C is the correct answer. Okay. Next question. Osmotic pressure of a solution containing 0.3 mole of solute per liter. So pi V is equal to nRT. Pi multiplied with volume 1 liter per liter. So 1. 0.3 mole. So 0.3 multiplied with RT. That means 0.3 RT. Option A is your correct answer. Next question, guys. Assertion and reasoning question. Cryoscopic constant depends on nature of solvent. Cryoscopic constant is a universal constant. A is true but R is false, guys. Come on, yeah. Cryoscopic constant is not a universal constant. Who said that, right? 19th question. When 1 mole of benzene is mixed with 1 mole of toluene, the vapor will contain, vapor of benzene is equal to given 12.8 kPa and vapor pressure of toluene is given to you as 3.85. Now because benzene has higher vapor pressure than toluene, higher percentage of benzene will be the answer. The vapor will contain higher percentage of benzene. Next question, guys. A glucose solution which boils at 101.04 degrees Celsius at 1 atmosphere. What will be relative lowering of vapor pressure of an aqueous solution of urea, which is equimolar to given glucose solution? So now we know that delta TB is equal to kBm. Is that right, everybody? We all know this, correct? So delta TB is equal to 101.04. Where did we get it? Look at this, 101.04 degrees Celsius. And because it says that a glucose solution, so assuming that it is water, minus 100, if I do delta TB, I have calculated, right? Now, M I have to calculate. How can I calculate M? Delta TB divided by KB, right? This KB, I can bring it here. So, delta TB is 1.04 divided by 0.52, which is going to give me 2 molar. Is that right? Okay. Now, 2 moles of solute in 1 kg of solvent. That means that if I have, look at this, the question says, what will be the relative lowering vapor pressure of an aqueous solution of urea? So if I take 2 moles of urea, equimolar. So 2 moles of urea if I take, that means that I have 2 moles of urea in 1 kg of water. Correct? Yes. Now number of moles of water is going to be how much? 1000 I am considering. Yes, assuming. So 1000 because 1 liter. So 1000 divided by 18 will be equal to 55.5. Agreed? Yes. Now, we have to calculate the relative lowering of vapor pressure, which is equal to chi2. Chi2 is equal to N2 divided by N1 plus N2. Now, what is N2? N2 you have calculated here 2 molar. So 2 molar. 2 molar plus what is number of moles of water? 55.5. So 2 plus 55.5 is 2 divided by 57.5. And this if you calculate, you will get 0.034 atm. Next question, guys. Identify the law which is stated as for any solution, the partial pressure of each volatile component in the solution is directly proportional to its mole fraction. Who said it? Raoul said it. So this is mixed back. We're done with the chapter, by the way. The chapter is over. Next question. Solubility of gases, okay, in liquids decrease with rise in temperature because the dissolution is an exothermic and it is a reversible process. If you evaporate the solvent, you will get the solute. So that's the thing. Next, water retention or puffiness due to high salt intake occurs due to, oh come on, osmosis. Everybody knows this, right? Okay, next question, guys. Look at this. Henna is investigating the melting point of different salt solution. She makes a salt solution into a freezer. She puts the salt solution into freezer and leaves it to freeze. She takes the frozen salt solution out of freezer and measures the temperature when the frozen salt solution melts. She repeats each experiment twice. The mass of the salt is 0.3 here, okay. And what is the melting point? In case of the reading, set 1 is minus 1.9, set 2 is minus 1.9. Mass of the salt used is 0.4 gram, that means it is minus 2.5, minus 2.6. For 0.5 gram, reading is minus 3.0. Second time when she did it, it is minus 5.5. Something is weird, no, here. When she took 0.6 gram, reading is minus 3.8. Reading in set 2 is minus 3.8. When you have taken 0.8 gram, reading in set 1 is minus 5.1. This is minus 5.0. This is 1.0. For 1 gram, that is 1 gram when you have taken, reading in set 1 is minus 6.4. Reading in set 2 is minus 6.3. Okay. Now you have the question. The question is one temperature in the second set of result does not fit the pattern. Which temperature is that? Definitely it is this for 0.5 gram. For 0.5 gram, minus 3.0. Here it has increased to minus 5.5. How is this possible? It's not possible, right? It cannot jump up to minus 5.5. So I have written it. See, third reading for 0.5 gram has to be an increase in the depression of freezing point and therefore decrease in freezing point. Okay. Increase in depression of freezing point. That means the dip in the freezing point that you see, that should be higher. And therefore, decrease in freezing point, so decrease in melting point also. When amount of salt is increased, but the trend is not found here. The trend is not followed here. Look at this. Yes. Minus 3.0, minus 5.5. This is a little weird, isn't it? Next question. Why did henna collect two sets of results? So that repetition and, accuracy and precision is followed. So to avoid error in data collection and give more objective data. In case of NaCl, if henna had used glucose, oops, sorry, my iPad got disconnected. Look at this. The question was, in place of NaCl, yes, instead of NaCl, if henna had used glucose, what would have been the melting point of the solution with 0.6 gram glucose in it? So, what do we have to do? Look at this. Delta TF of glucose is 1 multiplied with Kf multiplied with 0.6 multiplied with 1000 divided by 180 into 10. Let's consider this to be equation 1. Okay. Now, delta TF for NaCl. If we take NaCl, that means Van 't Hoff factor will be 2. Glucose does not dissociate. NaCl dissociate. That is why 2Na plus Cl minus. So, 2 multiplied with Kf. This will be multiplied with 0.6 into 1000 divided by 58.5 because that's the molar mass of NaCl multiplied with 10. Now, delta TF, look at this. For NaCl, they have given you something here. 1 second. Delta TF. Where is it given? With 0.6 gram glucose in it, right? 0.6 gram glucose in it. So for 0.6, the delta TF was what? 3.8. So here we are writing 3.8 multiplied with 2 multiplied with Kf into 0.6 into 1000 divided by this. Let us consider this equation 1. Now, if I divide equation 1 by equation 2, so delta TF glucose divided by 3.8 is equal to 58.5 multiplied with divided by 2 into 180. And this, when I do, delta TF of glucose will be 0.62. Now, freezing point or melting point is going to be minus 0.62 degrees Celsius. Now, there is an OR question, and the OR question is, what is the predicted melting point if 1.2 gram of salt is added to 10 milliliter of water? Justify your answer. The answer is depression in freezing point is directly proportional to molality. Mass of solute when the amount of solvent remains same. So 0.3 gram for 0.3 gram depression is 1.9. For 0.6 gram depression is 3.8. For 1.2 gram depression will be 3.8 into 2, which is equal to 7.6 degrees Celsius. Understood, guys? Is this understood, everybody? Yes or no? I just hope that my internet does not go again. My God, that was very scary. That was very, very, very scary. Isn't it? Very, very, very scary, guys. Is everything cool now? Is my internet working? I can see it. Yes, I can. Okay, everything is fine. Somehow my OBS was looking a little different. That's why. Chalo, no problem. Okay. Next question, guys. See, a 5% solution of Na2SO4.10H2O is isotonic with 2% solution of non-electrolytic, non-volatile substance X. Find out the molecular weight of X. How will you do this? See, pi 1 is equal to pi 2. You know that isotonic? Yes. So, IC1RT is equal to IC2RT. So, 3 into 5, why 3 into 5? We'll look at this. This is 5% solution. This is 2% solution. So, 3 into 5 divided by 322 is equal to 2 divided by molarity. If I do, then molarity will be 2 multiplied with 322. 322 molecular weight is given to you. And this is Na2SO4, guys. So Na2Na plus SO4. So 3 here. This divided by 3 into 5, molarity will be 42. No. What are they asking? Find out the molecular weight of X. So molecular weight of X. Molecular weight of X is equal to 42.9 gram. Understood? Okay. Next question, guys. What is the effect of temperature on the solubility of glucose in water? Addition of glucose to water, it is an exothermic. It is an endothermic reaction according to Le Chatelier's principle. On increase in temperature, solubility will increase. Yes, because it is endothermic reaction. Ibrahim collected a 10 milliliter each of fresh water and ocean water. He observed that one sample labeled P froze at 0 degrees Celsius, while the other Q at minus 1.3 degrees Celsius. Ibrahim forgot which of the two, P or Q, was ocean water. Help him identify which container contains ocean water, giving rationalization for your answer. Okay, so what do we do? Now see, Q is ocean water. Due to the presence of salts, it freezes at lower temperature. There will be depression in freezing point, right? Calculate Van't Hoff factor for an aqueous solution of K3FeCN6. Bache, K3FeCN6, so you will have 3K and 1 FeCN6, so Van't Hoff factor is going to be 4. If the degree of dissociation alpha is 0.852, what will be the boiling point of the solution if its concentration is 1 mole? Let's calculate this. See, I is equal to 1 plus n minus 1 alpha. I is equal to 1 plus 4 minus 1 multiplied with 0.0852. Alpha is given to you, see, 0.852. Sorry, 0.852 I should have written. 0.852. 0.852. Now if you calculate this, so 1 plus, this is 3, 3 plus, it will be 4, 4 into 0.852. Possibly it will be 3.556. You can calculate this. Then delta TB is equal to IKBM, which is equal to 3.556 multiplied with 0.52 into 1, which is equal to 1.85. So TB is equal to 101.85 degree, 101.85 degrees Celsius. Don't make a mistake like me. It's not 85, it's 885. Okay. You say that it is 85. Got it? All right. Yes. Okay, guys. Done? Okay. Next question, 27th question. What type of deviation from Raoult's law is expected when phenol and aniline are mixed with each other? It will be negative deviation, right? What change in the net volume of the mixture is expected? Graphically represent the deviation. Are mixed with each other, the net volume of the mixture will decrease. Delta V will be lesser than 0 due to strong intermolecular interaction. And here is the graphical representation also. Option B, look at this. The vapor pressure of pure water at certain temperature is 23.80 mmHg. If 1 mole of a non-volatile, non-electrolytic solute is dissolved in 100 gram water, calculate the resultant vapor pressure of the solution. What do you have to do? You have to calculate resultant vapor pressure. So RLVP is equal to, you know that it is P naught minus P divided by P naught, which is equal to Chi2. Chi2 is equal to N2 by N1. N2 is given to you as 0.1. N1 is given to you as 100 divided by 18 because, come on, Chi2 is equal to 0.1 divided by 5.55 plus 0.1. 0.1 divided by 5.65, that is equal to 0.018. P naught is given to you as 23.8 mmHg. So RLVP is equal to 23.8 minus P divided by 23.80 is equal to 0.018. Now 23.80 minus P is equal to 0.428. Yes. And P is equal to 23.80 minus 0.428, which is equal to 23.37 mmHg. Do you guys understand this, everybody? Do you understand this, everyone? Yes or no? Yes or no? Everybody, do you all understand this? Yes? Okay. Chalo, next question. An experiment was carried out in the laboratory to study depression in freezing point. 1 molar aqueous solution of AlNO3 whole thrice and 1 molar aqueous solution of glucose were taken. From the given figure, identify solution 1 and solution 2. Give a plausible reason for your answer. See. Solvent, this is the pure solvent. This is solution 1. This is solution 2. Acha. Was carried out in the laboratory to study depression in 1 molar aqueous solution of this as 1 molar aqueous solution of glucose was taken from. Okay. See, depression in freezing point, it's a colligative property. We know this, right? Now, in dilute solution, the depression of the freezing point, delta TF, will be directly proportional to the molar concentration of the solute in a solution. Now, from the graph, it is interpreted that the solution 2 shows more depression in the freezing point. Is that right? Solution 2 shows more depression in the freezing point. Correct? Yes. Now, if I take 1 molar AlNO3 whole thrice It has a higher Van't Hoff factor value, right? Because I will be equal to 3. So that means that then 1 molar glucose, correct? So 1 molar AlNO3 whole thrice, it will have higher depression. That means that AlNO3 whole thrice is the solution 2. Yes, and solution 1 is glucose solution. Next question is the osmotic pressure of a solution of cane sugar was found to be 2.468 atmospheric pressure at 300 Kelvin. Also, this is 3 marks. This is coming for 3 marks. That's why I was confused that why there is 3. If the solution was diluted 5 times, calculate the osmotic pressure at the same temperature. How can the osmotic pressure of the given cane sugar solution be decreased without changing its volume? Give a reason for your answer. Let's check it out. So if I have pi is equal to N2 divided by V, this multiplied with RT. So let V1 is equal to V and V2 let it be 5 times of volume. Why? Because it was 5 times. Look at this. See, diluted 5 times. It's written here, diluted 5 times. So 5V condition diluted by 5 times, right? Okay. So pi 1 by pi 2 is equal to N by V1 divided by N by V2. That means that 2.64 divided by pi 2 is equal to N by V. And this, you can calculate it from here. So pi 2 will come up with this. Now the second part of the answer will be the osmotic pressure of cane sugar can be decreased by decreasing the temperature. That's what we can do. Next question, okay? This I'm giving it to you as homework. I've only given you 3 questions as homework, my dear students. Can you please do it? If you do it, it will be very, very good for you. Yes, while giving intravenous injection to the patients, the doctors take utmost care of the concentration of the solution used. Why is it necessary to check the concentration of the solution? Very, very important. Please take a note of this, okay? Next, which pair of solution is isotonic at the same temperature? You tell me. Na2, 2 here, 1 here. Ca2 here, 2 here, 1 here and 2 here. I think this is the correct answer. Just by looking at the Van't Hoff factor, you can calculate it. Just by looking at the Van't Hoff factor. See, for this I is equal to 2, for this I is equal to 1. For this I is equal to 2, for this it will be I is equal to 3. For this I is equal to 1 and I is equal to 3. So, only option D is the correct answer. Okay. Next. Define Van't Hoff factor. Van't Hoff factor is the ratio between, again the definition is written, just go through it, okay. Next question everybody. Assuming complete dissociation, calculate the expected freezing point of a solution prepared by dissolving 6 gram of Glauber salt. What is Glauber salt? It is Na2SO4.10H2O in 0.100 kg of water. Kf for water is equal to 1.86 Kelvin kg per mole. How are we going to solve it? Let's solve it. So basically you have Glauber salt, right? You have what? You have Glauber salt, everybody. So if you have Glauber salt, the Glauber, that's very weird name. So if I have Na2SO4, Na2SO4 is going to dissociate how? 2Na plus SO4 2 minus, is that right? Yes. So Van't Hoff factor is going to be 3 particles, right? So I is equal to 3. Assuming complete dissociation. Okay, so 3 particles will be formed. Okay, now molar mass of Na2SO4, let's find out. Molar mass of Na2SO4.10H2O. How much will it be? It's going to be, let's say 46. 46 plus 32 plus 64 plus 10 into 18. That means how much is the molar mass? It's going to be 322. Correct? Okay. All right. Now what is given to you? Mass of water is given to you. Mass of water is how much? 0.100 kg. Yes. So 0.1 kg, that means it is 100 gram. Adding a page here. So now if this is 100 gram, everybody, if this is 100 gram, you tell me what do we have to do? What do we have to do? Now, acha, mass of water is equal to 0.1, that is 100 gram. Acha, given mass of 6 gram, given mass of globus salt. So given mass of 6.00 gram. Yes, 6.00 gram. That is what is given to you. Now, KF, is it given to you? 1.86. That is also given to you. KF is 1.86, correct? Yes. So what do we have to do? What do we have to do? We are going to write delta TF is equal to KF multiplied with, remember that formula? Yes, it will be WB multiplied with 1000 divided by WA multiplied with MB. KF is 1.86 multiplied with, what is WB? WB is going to be 6 multiplied with 1000 divided by WA. Remember, we calculated it 322. So it will be 322 multiplied with mass is 100. Correct? Yes. Now when you calculate this, this and this is cancelled. Yes. So this is 10 here, 6 and 322. I think if you calculate this, how much will you be getting? I think you will be getting around 1 point, calculate this, 100, this is gone. 6 into 6 ones are 6, 3. 1.039. 1.039 Kelvin. Are you getting this, everybody? Yes. Now, what do you want to calculate? Yes. Expected freezing point. We want to calculate freezing point. So, TF is going to be equal to what? TF is going to be TF naught plus or minus delta TF, correct? Yes. Minus delta TF. So TF naught is how much? TF naught is going to be, let's calculate it to be 273. 273 minus 1.039, if you do, you will be getting 271, 271.96. That will be the answer. That will be the answer. Okay. And the next question, guys. A 1.0 molar aqueous solution of trichloroacetic acid, CCl3CCOH. Trichloroacetic acid, right? CCl3COOH, it will be COOH, is heated to its boiling point. The solution has boiling point of 100.18 degrees Celsius. Determine the Van 't Hoff factor for trichloroacetic acid. Acha. Molality is given to you, guys. Molality is given to you as 1.00 m, correct? Boiling point of solution is how much? 100.18 degrees Celsius. So this 100.18 degrees Celsius, if you convert it to Kelvin, how much will you get? You will be getting 373.18 Kelvin. Correct? Okay. Van 't Hoff factor, the solution is boiling point of this. Acha. Okay. Now look at this. Look at the approach. Now boiling point of water. Boiling point of water is going to be equal to TB naught plus 100. That is 373 Kelvin. Is that correct? Yes. Now delta TB is equal to TB minus TB naught. Agreed? So it will be 373.18 minus 373, which is equal to how much? 0.18. Gotta add a page here. Okay. Once I do this, Now what do I have to do? Determine the Van 't Hoff factor. Acha. Oh, now you know that delta TB is equal to IKBM. IKBM, molality is given to you. Is that right, everybody? Yes. So delta TB, you know that it is 0.18 is equal to I, you have to calculate. KB, 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 KB. KB is not given to you. KB is also not given to you, right? So it will be IKB multiplied with 1. Is that right? Is that right, everybody? So that means that it will be 0.18 is equal to IKB. Is that right? And I can also write it as I is equal to 0.18 divided by what is KB? KB is going to be, KB is what? I think it's 0.512, no? Is it not given? KB for water. We need KB for water. So KB for water is usually 0.512. Okay, 0.512 Kelvin kg per mole. Kelvin kg per mole. Write this. Okay. Now, when you calculate this 0.18 divided by 0.512, I think you will get the answer, and that will be your I. And that will be your I. With this note, everybody, this chapter is over. I really hope that you have understood everything. If you did, do not forget to write it down in the comment section, because that is something that will really, really help me. Apart from this, thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to share this with your friends, guys. Lots of love. Tara, bye-bye. I'll see you later. Thank you so much.